All right, are we ready?
Forget it.
We're ready.
Again.
All right. I want to thank you all for being here, both in person and online. Tonight's topic is don't let life get you down, anxiety and depression. So tonight's topic, I am going to go over some of the brain stuff we usually go over, but I'm also going to implement some hormone stuff for you to help you understand how hormone imbalances can actually drive some of these emotional issues. We're also going to look at the underlying causes of usual hormone and neurotransmitter problems. So we're going to look at all of those things today. So with that being said, please come with an open heart and an open mind, because I want you to learn something to change somebody else's life. Yes, I want you all to get yourselves better. But when you're at the park, I want you to be able to tell somebody something that could change their lives, or on the plane, or at the grocery store, or somewhere. You just run into somebody, you'll be able to have some knowledge that can literally pass it forward, light a light, change somebody else. So what we're going to look at is normal brain development. So I'm going to go over this pretty quick because I've done it many times. But the brain develops from the bottom to the top, back to the front, inside out, and right to left. So that's how all brains develop. The key for us to understanding this is that the front half of the brain is literally the executive center that's controlling everything and what's going on. Now, when we look at depression and anxiety, the majority of it shows up in the frontal lobe. But there is one form that shows up in the back of the brain. This form in the back of the brain will not, and I've never seen respond well to pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals affect the front of the brain. The back of the brain, they will not help at all. If anything, they actually make it worse. So every drug that you see on the market is for frontal lobe function, or brain stem, where they give you like a benzo that literally makes you shut off everything, so you're just numb to the world. And that's things like Valium, or benzodiazepam, or different things like that. So the majority of drugs that you see are going after the frontal lobe. The back of the brain, we do not see anybody touch this. The back of the brain is also the area correlated to addiction issues. So this is I have an addictive personality. My genes made me addicted. I'm just a victim, or my whole family's addicted to something. It's literally the back of the brain here. There's always a correlation with it, though. We'll see the back of the brain is racing too fast, as well as they usually have low dopamine. So what are people that have low dopamine? What do they usually go after? They're going to be people who go after sugar for happiness, protein for happiness, and then stimulation. Regular ones that are going to go after drugs or sex or high-flying activities. These are your dopamine addicts. So the people who have to go skiing and have to be there for first run, that's going to be your dopamine addict. Person has to work out every day or life isn't okay, that's your dopamine addict. The person that gets stuck with having to complete tasks, that's going to be your dopamine addict. Person that needs sugar to feel okay, or some sort of food, that's going to be your dopamine addict. Make sense? So when we look at this form in the back of the brain comes from a specific brainwave frequency being out of control. If we remember the brainwaves, we have beta, alpha, theta, delta. We're not going to talk about delta because that's deep sleep. If you make too much of this, there are side effects like chronic pain, thinking issues, and so forth. So delta is 1 to 3 hertz. Theta, 3.5 to 8. This is light sleep. This is in the back of the brain, should be the dominant frequency. In the back of the brain, you want double the slow frequencies to the fast. The back of the brain is occipital lobe. And we got alpha, so that one's going to be 8 to 12. That's going to be in the zone, in the flow, memory, And we got beta, 13 to 38. And that's going to be stress as well as memory. So in the back of the brain, and why I went over this, the ratio of beta over theta should be 1.8 to 2.2. Now, I know I'm saying a bunch of stuff. What does that mean? It means you need 2 times the slow brain wave to the fast brain wave. In the thousands of people I've taken care of, I have seen 2 people come in that have had this normal, and they both had a developmental issue. Down syndrome and autism. Everybody else that I have seen, this part of the brain is not working correctly. So literally, what we're seeing is this is a chronic American issue. I can only say that because I've practiced only in America. I don't know what else the world does, but that's what I see here. So what does this mean? It means chronic stress. How does this manifest in your life? Poor stress tolerance, self-medicating. And this is the part of the brain that will cause anxiety that does not respond to medications. Say that again. This is the part of the brain that causes anxiety that does not respond to medications. This is a really special kind of anxiety, though. It's anxiety that if it gets really bad, will push you into depression. But you won't stay in depression long because then you pop back out and come right back to anxiety. So this can look like a bipolar type thing, but it's literally anxiety that drops into depression. And then when you get a little better, you go back to anxiety. This is the subconscious form. This is, well, I just always have racing thoughts and think about 40 things at once. Well, you don't have to. That's not easy for you to be healthy. The other problem with this part of the brain not working correctly, this controls 30% of your immune system. So my people that are chronically sick will see the 70% in the frontal lobe will be weak, and we'll see the other 30% in the back of the brain. And I go, oh, cool. I bet this is an autoimmune patient. And 9 times out of 10 it is. And it's because the brain is fatiguing. So why does this happen? These are defense mechanisms that the brain has learned. So I'm in a stressful event, and I adapt to deal with the event. So how do I adapt? If I keep myself in the point where I think of every possible thing that could happen, I can protect myself. Yes. But do we need to do this for years and months after? No. So what does this turn into? Fretting, inability to calm oneself, scared about everything, paranoia, self-medicating, and so forth. This is literally the back of the brain. This is the form of anxiety that we see very common in people. I've been to everywhere and I don't know what else to do. And it's because there's no pharmaceuticals on the market that touch this. Because it's doing the exact opposite to what they want to do in the front of the brain. So in the back of the brain, it literally is speeding up too much. And we need to slow it down. The problem, though, is when you go to the front of the brain, it gets really convoluted. It's not as simple as the back of the brain. Because the back of the brain is the pattern generator for the whole brain. So it sets the pace at which you think. So if we're thinking way too quickly, everything starts thinking way too quickly. Every aspect starts getting really mad. And then we get into that anxious state. When we go to the front of the brain, it completely gets convoluted. So I'm going to go over it. Well, do you want to know it? Yes? Okay.
What do you want, Doc? You tell us.
Well, I'm just letting you know if you want to see it, I'll talk about it. But it gets really convoluted because it does not get simple. So what we're going to look at is the right and the left brain, and we're talking about the front. We're talking about beta, alpha, and theta. Whichever one of these frequencies is dominant will determine what kind of symptom you have. If it is the right side of your brain and you overproduce beta, then you get depression. If it is the right side of the brain and you overproduce alpha, then you get anxiety. If you overproduce theta, then you get anxiety. So literally, whatever frequency you're overproducing will determine what kind of problem you get.
And it depends on the side of the brain too.
The side will determine it well, and it also determines front and back.
It's crazy.
So maybe it's the left side you're having issues with. So on the left side, overproduction of beta equals anxiety. Theta equals depression. Alpha, I did it backwards.
So it's flopped.
It's exactly backwards, yeah. Theta equals depression. So it literally is backwards.
So there's two anxieties, both A's stand for anxiety.
That's
So
wild.
anxiety in beta is on the left, and anxiety on the right is alpha and theta. Depression on the right is beta. Depression on the left is alpha and theta. So it literally flips. So unless you're testing this, you have no clue what you're doing. And this is where we run into problems because, oh, well, just try this drug, just try this drug, just try this drug, because you also need to know what dominant brain side you are. Are you right brain dominant? Are you left brain dominant? Your brain dominance will tell us which side we want to look at. In general, so I said not all the time, but I said in general, so it means it can get broken. It means it's not always true. But in general, 90% of the time, we will see women as right brain dominant and men as left brain dominant. So based on that, then we can say, well, if a right brain gets stressed out and produces way more beta, the female brain is more prone to depression. But we see that. Well, if the left brain is stressed out, the male brain produces more beta, then they're prone to anxiety.
Interesting.
And we see that as well. The stress brainwave is usually beta when you're in a high state. It's not that simple though, because it depends on what you do and how you modify and what your genes are doing, as well as the point that I didn't get into. It also is determined by how inflamed you are. So what kind of inflammation is going on in your body can also determine what's going on, as well as, and this is where it gets even more convoluted, what hormones are dominant or not dominant will determine if you go down that path as well. Jeez. So what do we need to know? If we're inflamed, all our hormones do not work correctly. I'm going to show you how this works. Are we okay on the brainwave stuff?
Yes, very interesting. Quick question though.
Yep.
What causes like beta to go? What would cause it to be?
So the question is, what causes beta to be produced? Stress.
Oh, okay.
So you will produce more beta and alpha when you're stressed. You will produce more low alpha and theta when you're relaxed.
Nice. Okay. So you can like actually reverse it if you were just to say, hey, I've been stressed for 6 hours. I'll meditate for 6 hours. Can you reverse it?
Yes and no. Meditation drives alpha.
Okay.
So meditation will drive alpha unless you know how to meditate really well and get into a light sleep state, but not fall asleep, which most people cannot do. So for 99.9% of people, it drives up alpha. So if you are a female and you're like, I want to just meditate, and you're already high alpha, then you drive in more alpha. But then this is where it gets really interesting. And this is off topic from depression and anxiety, but this is a really interesting fact. If you produce too much alpha in relation to theta, you will actually cause chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and sleep issues. So you can actually meditate yourself into pain. So really good meditators will actually be causing themselves problems if they don't make enough of the really slow brain waves. So I can come in, I go, ooh, this alpha is really high, beta's low, theta's low. I'm like, you meditate a lot there. How do you know? I'm like, well, your theta is really high. And they go, you also have a pain issue, don't you? And they go, how'd you know? Because the brain told me. So meditation in general is good as long as you're not predisposed to fibromyalgia or chronic pain issues or sleep issues, because then you can make it worse.
Interesting.
So it's not a one size fits all. You got to know what your brain is and what you're doing. So what do we look at is we got glucose. We got sugar. And we want our sugar to be between 185 and then we're okay. If our sugar spikes too much, it'll cause a problem. So if we are a thyroid body type, those are the leaner people, the ones who crave sugar all the time, and you keep driving up that sugar, that can drive the sugar up too high and cause a problem. If you're an adrenal or a substantial body type or a gonadal, like me, will actually drive up your sugar more is actually protein and fat. Because it'll spike your adrenals, which will spike your cortisol, which will spike and so forth. So here's the big takeaway that we need to understand. When you have a lipid panel done, one of the things that are tested on a lipid panel are called triglycerides. What you need to understand about triglycerides is they are sugar fat. So they are literally made from sugar. Your triglyceride level is a direct reflection of how well you metabolize sugar. If you do not metabolize sugar good, your triglycerides are high. If you metabolize or suck in sugar into your cells well, your triglycerides are low. Why am I bringing this up? Because triglycerides are basically bubble gum for all your hormone receptors. What does that mean? We have our hormone receptor right here. And when you have triglycerides going around and they're high, they jam in to every hormone receptor and they gum it up. What hormones could we be talking about? Estrogen, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, DHEA, insulin, thyroid, all the stuff that you want to use to do well. High sugars, literally what happens is this. You make sugar, you're using the sugar because you ate the food, and your body goes, this is really important. We don't know when we're going to eat next, but we're not absorbing it. So what do we do with it? We don't want to pee it out because that's a waste of energy. So it literally drives it into the liver, turns it into triglycerides, and then spits it out.
Like storage.
And then it gets stored in different areas. The problem with that, like I said, is it clogs up all the receptor sites. Now, why is this important when we're talking about depression and anxiety? It's important because there are specific hormones that need to be active for neurotransmitters to attach in the brain. So that means you need XYZ hormone to make sure dopamine attaches. You need XYZ hormone to make serotonin or GABA or acetylcholine. And I'm going to teach you that right now. So what is the hormone that we need for? So let's just make it a simple thing. And let's say dopamine, if it's low, equals anxiety. Does equal sadness. I'm making it simple. It's not this simple. Okay. The hormones, the neurotransmitters overlap. Dopamine and serotonin overlap. GABA overlaps. Acetylcholine by itself, it doesn't overlap. Acetylcholine, ACH, if it is low, then we have a bad memory. You can't remember things. Now, why am I putting these two things here? Because dopamine and acetylcholine, their ability to bind to neurons in the brain is directly correlated to two hormones, DHEA and testosterone.
Really?
Your testosterone level and your DHEA level determines your dopamine binding and how happy you are, and your acetylcholine. So in general, of the two sexes, which one is usually more happy-go-lucky and slushes off stress easier? The males. And they have more testosterone because we have these little balls that shoot out testosterone every 15 minutes. Females don't get that. They literally have to take DHEA, run it down into their adrenals, convert it into testosterone. So these two hormones, DHEA and testosterone, determine the binding ability, it's a cofactor, in the brain for dopamine and acetylcholine.
Interesting.
So this is, if we look at this, this is another way to look at this. Have we ever seen a lady go through menopause and then her brain just falls apart?
Never.
So if you're seeing that, it's literally telling you she is not having enough acetylcholine because her testosterone just dumped.
Interesting.
Why would that happen? For females, if you're going to be going through menopause, perimenopause, the goal for you to make sure your brain does not rot is to make sure your adrenals stay healthy.
Interesting.
Adrenal protection determines how long your brain works for a female. Why is that? Because your adrenals are where the hormones are going to be made now, not the ovaries. Keep the adrenals healthy, your brain stays healthy. Adrenals get sick for females, everything goes to hell in a handbag. So this is what we see. High productive, very accomplished female goes through menopause, now she doesn't even know her name. Well, what happened? Why is she falling apart? Literally, she's run, destroys her adrenals. Now she doesn't have those hormones anymore. Brain just falls apart.
Wow, scary. So what can you do to keep your adrenals happy?
So to keep your adrenals happy, we have adrenal support products. The other thing you're going to want to do is you want to make sure that you don't overuse your adrenals. So there are products called adaptogens. These are things that make sure your pituitary and your hypothalamus and your HPA axis, basically, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, does not overreact. The product that we sell is called adaptogen or adaptocrine. You take that, it has things like ashwagandha, holy basil, rhodiola in it, and it literally makes sure that you don't overreact.
Cool.
So that you don't have the issues.
So supplements.
You can do supplementation. You can also lower your stress level. And you also are going to want to try to modulate your blood sugars, because if your blood sugars are going up and down, then your cortisol is going to start spiking up and down, and that will cause adrenal fatigue as well.
Yeah. Stress.
So blood sugar is a big one. Oxygen is another big one. So this is not something I really talk about, but what we want to look at is how well your oxygen is determines how well you can make energy. For brain health, oxygen we want to have at 97, but there's a time that we don't know what it is that we all want to be aware of. And how big you are doesn't mean you have this problem. 30% of people have this problem and are healthy or low weight, and that is sleep apnea. So if you have this, it will literally drive your oxygen down and literally cause issues. If you want to know if you have sleep apnea, have a friend or a spouse, if you're sleeping, and go, do you go and stop breathing? That's an indicator. If you don't have that, you can get a product called a Looky Ring. Lookee, I believe is how you spell it. And what it is a continuous blood or oxygen monitor, and you put it on, and it syncs to your phone, and it runs through the night, and it will tell you if you have any oxygen dumps. If you do, that can predispose you to anxiety and depression. It can also predispose you to heart attacks, strokes. So it's an easy way. If you use different codes, you can get them for like $127. Have it for life, link it to your phone, and then you can start seeing what happens. And then you can play with it and go, oh, cool. My oxygen in Denver is 97. At sea level, it's 100. Oh, in Breck, it's 80. Oh, maybe I shouldn't live in Breckenridge. Because we literally see changes like that. And this is why you'll literally see people, and this is one of the doctors I was talking to, he had a person that in Denver, his oxygen level was 97. And as soon as he went to Breck, it was at 80. And he started having delirium and stuff, and the guy literally had a heart attack because of the altitude. And it's not that there's less oxygen, there's less pressure to push the air in. So it's harder for you to breathe. Yes?
The other thing I've seen as a nurse is that we have people coming from low altitudes and they have a stroke.
Yes, 100%. Low altitudes to high have a stroke, 100% oxygen related. They can't handle it. They're not used to it. Their airway's not strong enough, or they're having a couple too many wobbly pops or too many beverages, and that can inhibit the nerves and how they function as well. All right, so we talked about dopamine. We talked about acetylcholine. So if you didn't hear it, what we had from the crowd is that when people come from low altitude to Denver or higher, we see an incidence of stroke going up. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what drives serotonin. This is where you females have the advantage. Serotonin is driven in by estrogen. Estrogen helps with serotonin binding. So it's easier for you to drive it in to connect to the nerves. But if you have too much estrogen, it's actually neuroinflammatory. So we don't want any of that. And you know what this is. This is PMS. This is fibroids. This is ant flow, and I hate everybody. This is my breast hurts. Any part of my body hurts. That's too much estrogen. That means your liver is sick and you're not able to get rid of the estrogen. Estrogen is the most toxic substance that you produce, and you have to get rid of it each month when you're going in your flow. And if you don't metabolize it out correctly, because it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of B vitamins and glutathione to get it out, your liver gets stuck. And if your liver is stagnant and can't move the estrogen out, you get estrogen byproducts. And that's what causes fibroids, PMS, and all the issues that you talk about that you don't like. So literally, problems with menses, problems with that time of the month, tells me liver issues. And there are certain products you can take. There's Veratrol, and we have a liver product that will literally make it so you start cleaning it correctly. And then the last one we're going to talk about is GABA. So GABA is the neurotransmitter of the brainstem. If GABA isn't working correctly, you can have severe anxiety. The hormone that helps you attach GABA is progesterone. So this is why, if everything is good and you're actually functioning okay and your hormones are regulating correctly, you will sleep really, really well when your progesterone is really, 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 really high. But if it's not working correctly, the GABA will not attach correctly, and we get issues. So hormones drive connectivity, neurotransmitters drive connectivity, and then you got to make sure that you're making them correctly. So as you can see, it's not as simple as, well, I need dopamine. Yes, but what's your testosterone? What's your DHEA? Your DHEA and testosterone decrease as we age. There's a book called the Dale Bredesen, and it's The End of Alzheimer's, and it talks about hormone levels that you have to stop brain deterioration.
Awesome.
For females, you want your DHEA to be 350 or more. For males, you want it 400 or more.
How can you test that blood?
It's literally a blood test that we run. It's very affordable. It's easy. It's cheaper. Testosterone is more expensive, but there's levels for that as well. And there's levels for insulin and thyroid and all these things. So you keep these hormone levels up, it keeps you being able to be anabolic, because these hormones actually build you up. So DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, they were building hormones. Cortisol actually turns off inflammation by ripping you apart. So it causes osteoporosis, causes bone fibrosis, causes issues. So you don't want too much cortisol. You don't want too much prednisone. It causes bone thinning, muscle issues, and so forth. You want more testosterone, and we know that. You don't shoot prednisone in to get big. You shoot testosterone in to get big. Same thing, estrogen, and so forth. So you want these hormones to help you work correctly. So if these hormones are balanced, the neurotransmitters are balanced, then when we train the brain and you don't have enough inflammation, the inflammation's stable, oxygen's good, emotion's good, and blood sugar's good, then when we train the brain, you change quickly. What do I run into? You're inflamed. What is the number one thing inflaming you that most people have no clue?
Food.
Food is the answer, but it's specifically what's in food, and it's specifically what RFK Jr. said he was going to try to get rid of, and it's seed oils. Seed oils are extremely inflammatory. And you go, well, what's a seed oil? Any vegetable oil is bad for you. canola, sunflower, flax, all this stuff is bad. It's interesting. I've been running autoimmune tests, and everybody I've run so far, it's a small data set, but everybody I've run so far is allergic to flaxseed oil or in flaxseed itself.
It's crazy.
So what we need to understand is anything besides olive oil,
Avocado.
coconut oil, avocado oil, and walnut oil is bad. It literally will cause chronic inflammation. It will literally make more arachidonic acid, which is a form of omega-6. And the more omega-6 you have, the more inflammation you have. It literally drives on the inflammatory cascade. It activates interleukin-6. So we don't want that. That's an inflammatory cascade. The more omega-3s you have, the better you are. So how you balance it out is you have to take a lot of omega-3s. But if you take a lot of omega-3s and then you go and eat on your chip box and it says sunflower oil, you're eating the bad stuff. Canola oil, you're eating the bad stuff.
Right.
The trick that they'll say is they'll say arachidonic acid to make you not know that that is a seed oil and it's in disguise.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
So the number one thing that is causing inflammation besides sugars is these oils, and we're not aware of it. So you start looking and you're like, man, I can't eat anything.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, then take a lot of omega-3s to try to balance it out. Never cook with vegetable oils. It's literally going to kill you.
Damn.
Go over to those other oils and you'll be okay. And if you can do butter or ghee or tallow or lard. Those are fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the pressed oils, cottonseed oil, all these other ones are really bad.
Okay.
They will literally drive inflammation. And anecdotally, there's a direct correlation to when they were entered into our food supply and all-cause mortality going up.
Terrible.
So it's something for us to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Inflammation low, hormones right, neurotransmitters right, we can change the brain easy.
Okay.
Inflammation high, hormones off, it's going to be really hard.
Right.
So if you're like, Doc, it isn't changing fast enough. Cool. Is all the inflammation gone? I don't know. We'll run a blood test then. Well, my blood test says that's good. Cool. Let's see what your hormones are. Testosterone's off. DHEA is off. Let's put it this way. I haven't met a good DHEA yet. So I want you to see that if you're not responding, it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that we have something we haven't addressed yet. Inflammation, we can go inflammation hunting, and then we can go hormone hunting. And then you will respond.
Awesome.
So if anything comes up and you're like, Doc, I'm not responding as quickly as I want, let's run some labs. Then we'll figure out what to do to help you stabilize that. So if you have a friend or family member who goes, I've tried everything. I have anxiety, I have depression, I don't know what to do. There's ways to go. We have people who are on multiple meds and they still have the problems. That's because of inflammation, I can tell you right now, or hormones.
So weird.
Because the inflammation will literally make it so the hormones won't bind. Will make it so the neurotransmitters won't work. So that's what we want to look at. Friend or family talks about it, there's ways. There's ways to get them out. Cool. So I want to thank you guys all for being here.
Thank
And
you.
have a blessed night.
Awesome. You too. You know, it's